Welcome to week 7 of 20 for 20. This week we are going to talk about the topic of shame. And I know it sounds ridiculous, and why would we ever talk about something like that in marriage? But before we move into other topics like pornography or intimacy or boundaries that we could set up in our own marriages that can protect our relationship, I think we need to really address the topic of shame. Shame and fear are excellent motivators, right? But they're terrible sustainers of life. The other day I was in Chick-fil-A, and I've already told you guys that I'm a huge people watcher. I love to watch people. And I saw this cute little couple come in the door, and the mom had her little baby perched on her hip, and the husband was trying to juggle his tray to get them over to a table. Well, they both identified the table they wanted to go to. And so the husband hurried ahead of her, and he went over to go and, set out everything and offload this huge, burden basically he was carrying. Well, the mom made a beeline over, and he didn't see her go the opposite direction. She went over to go grab a high chair in order for them to all sit together. Well, he's busy unloading the tray and doesn't realize it, and she comes over and she's all, "Oh, no, don't you worry about it. I'll take care of the baby and the high chair. You just sit and enjoy your meal." And my heart sunk a little because I wasn't sitting there like, "Ooh, you terrible wife," but what I saw in her is the very thing I've done so many times to Tim also, is I've failed to recognize what he was dealing with and only saw what I was trying to, juggle, and said something that was super shaming and really with only the intention of making him feel bad or changing his behavior, not really recognizing the big picture of what was going on. And I think we often do these kind of things with shame and fear in our marriages. Here's some other ways I think it plays out, especially with shame. We could say things like, we hear it, even in our society says, "Be a real man, man up." It just invokes shame and fear, right? Or, "What are you thinking?" Or, "If you loved me, you would never click on those images," or "You would never look at those things. You would never do that if you loved me." Or, "You're not meeting all of our financial obligations, so great, now I don't get to stay home with our kids. I have to go out and get a job." Shame settles in, and it takes root in our marriages, and it's really hard to overcome them. Some of the things that, with fear even, without even knowing, and I think sometimes husbands do this more often, is they say things that evoke fear in a wife's heart, which sometimes she reacts and gives shameful comments. Some of the things that he might say is, "I'm done. I'm done. I'm leaving." Or, "If you tell anybody what's happening in our house, then you're just going to make us look stupid." Or, "No one thinks, acts, or is as needy as you are." Fear, and shame, they just take over the very thing that we want to give life to. Well, I wish I could say that I've never done any of those things, but I have. But I think there becomes a time when we have to recognize and move our marriage forward. And when those thoughts come in, we stop them immediately. We take hold of them and we say, "No, I'm not gonna respond out of shame. I'm not gonna let my decisions be motivated by shame and fear." A time that I can remember that happened for Tim and I was a lot of years ago. But he had just gotten out of the military. I was due to deliver our third baby, and we had no medical insurance. And for that reason, and several other reasons, we decided to go with a midwife because we could kind of control the costs and know exactly upfront what we were going to be getting ourselves into financially. Well, our little Lauren decided to come super fast, and so Tim ended up delivering her at home. And it was one of the most amazing experiences for Tim and I together. And that night, though, he was scheduled to fly out, and because we were in such a financial pickle, we were really struggling financially, he was gonna re-sign up for the military. And he flew out, and I got a call from him that night, and he said to me, "Nicole, that was amazing." And of course I'm not quoting him exactly what he said, but I think I want to go to medical school. And I felt that fear start gripping my heart. I started to think about all the possible scenarios that were going to play out, and none of them sounded fantastic to me. We had a big family, and how are we going to, for the next 10 years, live basically in poverty in order to get you to this place, where you're through medical school and residency? And I knew in that moment I could shame him into obedience. I could change his his mind by just shaming him and saying, "What are you thinking? This is the stupidest thing," or all the 100 other things I could have said. But I decided that I was going to keep my mouth shut, and I was going to process those feelings and work through them on my own before I went to him with them. So he didn't sign the papers. He didn't go into the military, and it worked out okay. But I think in that moment, it was one of those key moments that had I said anything, it would have changed the course of our entire life, because shame would have taken hold of him because fear was taking hold of my heart. I right now want to talk to you about make a difference moment. In the next few weeks, you're going to hear me say this over and over. It's the make a difference moment. We all are faced with those make a difference moments in our marriages. And I think instead of allowing shame and fear to grip our marriages, we can allow vulnerability and compassion to replace those. Being vulnerable enough to identify our own feelings and having compassion for our spouse. Let's move our marriages forward. Let's move them from our old thinking to our new thinking by taking hold of those thoughts. As soon as we have that fear rise up in our heart and we immediately go to those shame thoughts, stop them right there. If you have to put your fingers over your mouth, which I do often, you'll see me go like that. That means you don't need to say anything right now. Stop it right then and move your marriage forward by no longer shaming or eliciting those feelings in your spouse that aren't necessary. You could process those things on your own, even when those feelings are valid. And sometimes, like with Tim and going to med school, I had every right to feel fearful and scared of the trajectory of our future, but I needed to make sure that I removed shame from that. So today, before you give your opinion or anything, remove shame from what you're thinking and move your marriage forward into the next season.